The shrill ring of Felicity Warren's phone shattered the peaceful quiet of her mountain cabin just as the sun began to dip behind the pines. It was her realtor, confirming that someone had finally rented the long, vacant property next door. After 3 years of enjoying the surrounding wilderness in perfect solitude, Felicity would have a neighbor for the summer. "He's some big shot from the city," the realtor had said. "Paid for the whole season up front. Must be nice, huh?" Felicity hadn't cared much about who was moving in, only that her cherished isolation would now be compromised. As a successful wildlife photographer who had escaped the chaos of city life, this cabin was her sanctuary, the place where she rebuilt herself after her disastrous engagement ended. The last thing she needed was some entitled businessman disturbing her peace. That evening, as she sat on her porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, she heard the distinctive sound of tires on gravel. A sleek black Range Rover pulled up to the neighboring cabin, and Felicity involuntarily held her breath. The man who stepped out wasn't what she expected. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore faded jeans and a simple gray t-shirt that stretched across his chest. No suit, no pretension. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and even from a distance, she could see the exhaustion in his posture as he stretched after the long drive. Felicity quickly turned away when he glanced in her direction, pretending to be fascinated by the hummingbird feeder hanging from her porch. But from the corner of her eye, she watched as he retrieved a single duffel bag from the back seat. No assistant, no entourage, just a man who looked like he needed a break from something. "Evening," he called out, his deep voice carrying across the space between their cabins. Felicity reluctantly lifted her hand in acknowledgement. "Welcome to the middle of nowhere," she replied, attempting to sound friendly despite her reservations. He offered a tired smile that reached his eyes, making them crinkle at the corners. "That's exactly what I paid for." With that enigmatic statement, he disappeared into his cabin, and Felicity was left wondering who exactly had moved in next door. The next morning, Felicity rose before dawn as usual, eager to capture the early light for her latest photography project. She crept quietly down her porch steps, camera bag slung over her shoulder, and nearly jumped out of her skin when she spotted a figure sitting on the shared dock at the edge of the lake. Her neighbor was already up, a steaming mug in his hands as he gazed out at the still water. Something about his solitary silhouette against the misty lake tugged at her. He didn't look like someone who had come to disrupt the peace. He looked like someone seeking it. Taking a deep breath, Felicity decided to be neighborly. She approached the dock, her footsteps deliberately loud on the wooden planks to avoid startling him. "Good morning," she said, coming to stand a few feet away. Early riser, he turned, and in the soft dawn light she got her first good look at him. Strong jawline dusted with stubble, intelligent gray eyes, and a small scar just above his right eyebrow that gave his otherwise perfect face character. "Never really got to sleep," he admitted. "I'm Noah, by the way, Noah Nichols." "Felicity Warren," she replied, shifting her camera bag. "Insomnia or jet lag? Neither. Just not used to actual silence." He gestured to the empty space beside him on the dock. "Mind if I watch you work, unless I'm disturbing you?" Felicity hesitated. She'd come to these mountains precisely to avoid company, especially male company. But something in Noah's expression, a mixture of respect and genuine interest, made her reconsider. "I'm just scouting locations today," she said, sitting down carefully beside him but maintaining a professional distance. "Nothing exciting. You're a photographer?" He asked, eyeing her professional-grade camera with appreciation. "Wildlife and nature," she confirmed. "It's why I moved here permanently 3 years ago." Noah looked impressed. "You live here year-round, even through the winters." "Best time to photograph the local wildlife," Felicity said, feeling a spark of pride. "Though I do travel for specific assignments. What about you? The realtor said you rented for the entire summer." A shadow passed over Noah's face. "I needed somewhere to recalibrate. My company just went through a major acquisition, and the past 2 years have been nothing but boardrooms and negotiations." "What kind of company?" Felicity asked, genuinely curious despite herself. Nichols Publishing, he said, and Felicity's eyes widened slightly. Even she recognized the name of one of the largest independent publishing houses in the country. "You're that Noah Nichols?" she asked, suddenly feeling self-conscious in her worn hiking boots and flannel shirt. He grimaced. "Please don't start treating me differently." "That's exactly why I came out here to be just Noah for a while." Felicity studied him for a moment, noting the sincerity in his eyes. "Well, just Noah, you picked a good spot to hide from the world, but fair warning, the locals will figure out who you are eventually. Small town, big gossip." Noah chuckled, a warm sound that seemed to melt into the morning mist. "I'll take my chances. At least they won't be trying to sell me something or pitch me the next great American novel." As the sun began to rise fully over the mountains, Felicity found herself reluctant to leave their conversation. Noah was surprisingly easy to talk to, intelligent without being condescending, wealthy without flaunting it. "I should get going before I lose this light," she finally said, standing up. "The fog on the lake makes for great atmospheric shots." Noah nodded, rising to his feet as well. "Don't let me keep you, but maybe. Would you mind showing me some good hiking trails sometime? I'd rather not get lost in these woods." Felicity hesitated, weighing her desire for solitude against the genuine request for help. "There's a trailhead about half a mile up the road. Not too difficult, great views. I'm heading there tomorrow morning if you want to join." The smile that broke across Noah's face was unexpectedly boyish. "I'd like that, thank you." As Felicity walked away, camera in hand, she couldn't help but feel a flutter of something unfamiliar in her chest. She told herself it was simply the prospect of a new friendship, nothing more. She'd sworn off relationships after David had left her for her own assistant, claiming Felicity was too focused on her career and never present. The irony that her career demanded her presence in the moment more than most hadn't been lost on her. No, she decided firmly. Noah Nichols might be handsome, intelligent, and surprisingly down-to-earth for a billionaire publisher, but he was temporary, just passing through. And Felicity had built her life here on permanence. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, a perfect day for hiking. Felicity had spent a restless night alternating between looking forward to showing Noah her favorite trails and berating herself for even caring. She was just being neighborly, she reminded herself as she pulled on her hiking boots. Noah was waiting outside his cabin when she arrived, dressed appropriately in hiking pants and a lightweight jacket. He'd clearly done some outdoor recreation before, which was a relief. "Morning," he greeted her with a tentative smile. "I made coffee." He held out a thermos. "Thanks," Felicity said, surprised by the thoughtful gesture. She took a sip and raised her eyebrows. "This is good." "One of the few things I can make well," Noah admitted. "Ready when you are." As they hiked, Felicity found herself pointing out things she normally kept to herself, the best spots to see deer at dusk. The hidden waterfall that few tourists knew about, the patch of wild blackberries that would be ripe in a few weeks. Noah absorbed it all, asking intelligent questions about the local ecosystem and stopping occasionally to admire particularly beautiful vistas. He wasn't trying to rush through the experience or check it off a list. He was genuinely present. "So," Noah ventured as they rested on a rocky outcropping overlooking the valley, "how does someone become a professional wildlife photographer? That's not exactly a career they advertise in high school guidance offices." Felicity smiled, taking a swig from her water bottle. "I started in photojournalism, actually. Worked for a newspaper in Chicago for 5 years, but I always felt confined. Urban environments have their own beauty, but something in me craved wilderness." Noah nodded, looking out over the expanse of trees below them. "I understand that. Sometimes I think I was born in the wrong century. All these digital meetings and constant connectivity, it's efficient but exhausting." "Is that why you're hiding out in the mountains, escaping technology?" Noah's expression grew thoughtful. "Partly, but mainly I'm escaping expectations. When your name is on the building, everyone expects you to have all the answers. And you don't," Felicity asked softly. He turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious. I've been making decisions that affect thousands of people's livelihoods. The publishing industry is changing so fast and every choice feels momentous. I just needed space to think clearly. Felicity found herself nodding. That's why I came here too. After my engagement ended, I needed to remember who I was when I wasn't trying to be what someone else wanted. Noah's gaze lingered on her face, and Felicity felt suddenly self-conscious about sharing such a personal detail. But instead of awkward pity, his expression showed understanding. "Sounds like we're both refugees from our own lives," he said with a half-smile. "I prefer to think of it as finding my real life," Felicity corrected gently. "This isn't an escape for me anymore, it's home." Noah's smile widened. "I envy that certainty." They continued hiking, the conversation flowing easily between serious topics and lighter observations. By the time they returned to their cabins in the late afternoon, Felicity realized she'd enjoyed herself more than she had in months. "Thank you for today," Noah said as they reached the point where they would part ways. "Would it be presumptuous to ask if we could do this again?" Felicity found herself nodding before she could overthink it. "There's a farmer's market in town on Saturday mornings. The locals make amazing pies." "It's a date," Noah said, then quickly amended. "I mean, not a date, just a friendly outing between neighbors." Felicity laughed at his awkwardness, finding it endearing from someone who probably negotiated million-dollar deals without breaking a sweat. "I knew what you meant." As she walked back to her cabin, Felicity tried to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest. Noah was just a temporary neighbor, she reminded herself. In a few months, he'd return to his world of boardrooms and business deals, and she'd still be here with her cameras and solitude. But as she looked back and saw him standing on his porch, watching her go with a smile that made his whole face light up, Felicity couldn't help but wonder if perhaps her perfectly constructed solitude had room for one more person. The weeks that followed fell into an unexpected but pleasant rhythm. Mornings often found them sharing coffee on the dock before Felicity headed out for her photography excursions. Sometimes Noah would join her, proving to be both good company and surprisingly knowledgeable about local bird species. "My grandfather was an amateur ornithologist," he explained one day when he correctly identified a rarely seen warbler before Felicity could. "He taught me to appreciate the small, easily missed wonders of the natural world. In the evenings, they sometimes cooked together." Noah admitted early on that his culinary skills were limited, so Felicity showed him how to prepare simple, hearty meals using local ingredients. He proved to be an attentive student, eager to learn and quick to laugh at his own mistakes. "In the city, I usually just order in," he confessed one evening as they sat on Felicity's porch, watching fireflies dance above the lake. "This is much better." Felicity glanced at him, noting how relaxed he looked compared to when he'd first arrived. The constant tension in his shoulders had eased and his eyes had lost that haunted, exhausted look. "You seem different," she observed. Noah turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "I feel different, more like myself maybe, or the self I'd forgotten existed beneath all the responsibilities." It was during their third week as neighbors that everything changed. They'd hiked to Felicity's favorite hidden meadow, a secluded spot bursting with wildflowers where she often photographed deer at dusk. A sudden summer storm caught them by surprise, the sky darkening with alarming speed. "We need to get back," Felicity said urgently, packing up her camera equipment. "These storms can get intense quickly." They hurried back along the trail, but the downpour began before they could reach safety, turning the path into slick mud. Felicity's foot caught on an exposed root and she felt herself falling, a sharp pain shooting through her ankle. Noah was at her side instantly. "Are you okay?" Felicity tried to stand but winced as she put weight on her foot. "I think I sprained it." Without hesitation, Noah scooped her up into his arms. "Put your arms around my neck," he instructed, his voice calm but authoritative. "You can't carry me all the way back," Felicity protested, even as she complied, secretly impressed by his strength. "Watch me," he said with a determined set to his jaw. The rain pounded down as Noah carefully navigated the slippery trail, holding Felicity securely against his chest. She could feel his heart beating steadily, a contrast to her own racing pulse. Being this close to him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, awakened feelings she'd been trying desperately to ignore. By the time they reached her cabin, they were both soaked to the skin. Noah gently set Felicity down on her couch and immediately moved to the kitchen, returning with ice wrapped in a dish towel. "Elevate your foot," he instructed, carefully placing the makeshift ice pack on her ankle. "I'll start a fire to warm us up." Felicity watched as Noah efficiently built a fire in her fireplace, moving around her cabin with surprising familiarity. "You're good at taking charge," she observed. He glanced back at her, a wry smile twisting his lips. "Force of habit. Running a company tends to develop certain instincts." As the fire crackled to life, Noah disappeared briefly into her bathroom, returning with a towel that he handed to her. "You should change into dry clothes. I'll make some tea." Felicity hesitated, suddenly aware of their intimate situation. "You should go back to your cabin and change too." "I'll be fine." Noah's expression grew serious. "I'm not leaving you alone with a sprained ankle during a storm." A crash of thunder punctuated his statement as if nature itself agreed with him. Eventually, they compromised. Noah ran to his cabin for dry clothes while Felicity changed, hopping awkwardly on one foot. By the time he returned, she was wrapped in her warmest sweater and sitting on the couch with her ankle propped up. The storm raged outside as they sipped hot tea by the fire, the atmosphere between them charged with unspoken awareness. Felicity found herself studying Noah's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the thoughtful set of his mouth. When had this wealthy stranger become someone she couldn't imagine not seeing every day? "Tell me about your company," she said, partly to distract herself from these dangerous thoughts. "What's it like running a publishing empire?" Noah considered the question, absently running a finger around the rim of his mug. "Complicated. Publishing is an industry built on art but constrained by commerce. Finding the balance is challenging." "But you love it," Felicity observed. "It wasn't a question." "I do," he admitted. "Books changed my life as a kid. I was this awkward, too serious boy who found refuge in stories. When my father wanted to sell the company after my grandfather died, I couldn't bear the thought of it becoming just another subsidiary of some media conglomerate. So you took over instead." Noah nodded. "I was only 28. Everyone thought I was too young, too inexperienced, but I was determined to prove them wrong." "And did you?" A smile tugged at his lips. "The company's value has tripled in the decade since I took over. We've launched careers of authors who went on to win major literary prizes. So yes, I think I did." Felicity found herself smiling back. "That's impressive." "What about you?" Noah asked, shifting to face her more fully. "Your photography is incredible." "Have you ever thought about publishing a collection?" Felicity laughed softly. "Is this where you pitch me a book deal, Mr. Publisher?" Noah's eyes crinkled. "No pitch, just genuine curiosity about a talented artist." The sincerity in his voice made Felicity's breath catch. "I've thought about it," she admitted, "but I've always been better at capturing moments than at promoting myself." "The right publisher would handle the promotion," Noah said casually. "All you need to do is curate your best work." "Are you offering?" Felicity asked, only half joking. Noah's expression turned serious. "If you wanted to pursue it, I'd be happy to introduce you to our nature photography editor, but only if that's something you're interested in." The conversation shifted to books they loved, authors they admired, places they'd both traveled. Hours passed unnoticed as the storm gradually subsided outside. When Felicity yawned despite herself, Noah glanced at his watch and looked surprised. "It's past midnight," he said, rising from the couch. "I should let you get some rest." As he helped Felicity adjust her pillow and brought her water and painkillers for the night, she found herself wishing he wouldn't leave. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "Thank you," she said as he prepared to go, "for carrying me home, for taking care of me." Noah paused at the door, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Get some rest, Felicity. I'll check on you in the morning." After he left, Felicity lay awake, listening to the occasional drip from the eaves and the distant rumble of thunder as the storm moved on. Something had shifted between them tonight, something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Morning brought sunshine and clarity. Felicity's ankle felt better, though still tender. She had just managed to make coffee, balancing awkwardly on one foot when a knock came at her door. Noah stood on her porch, holding a bag from the local bakery and wearing a concerned expression. "How's the patient?" "Much improved," Felicity said, gesturing for him to come in. "Though I wouldn't say no to whatever smells so good in that bag." They settled at her small kitchen table, sharing cinnamon rolls and coffee. Noah watched as Felicity tentatively tested her ankle. "I called Dr. Miller in town," he said. "She can see you at 11 if you want to have it checked out." Felicity raised an eyebrow. "You called the local doctor." "How did you even know who to call?" Noah looked slightly embarrassed. "I asked Mrs. Henderson at the general store last week, just in case of emergencies." "That was thoughtful," Felicity said, touched by his foresight. "I tend to plan for contingencies," Noah admitted. "Occupational hazard." As Noah drove her to the doctor's office later that morning, Felicity found herself wondering how someone who seemed so genuinely considerate had remained single. The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Why aren't you married? Or are you divorced?" Noah glanced at her in surprise before returning his attention to the winding mountain road. "Neither. I've never been married." "But you're successful, attractive, kind." Felicity trailed off, suddenly aware of how her words sounded. A smile played at the corners of Noah's mouth. "You think I'm attractive?" Felicity felt her cheeks warm. "Objectively speaking," Noah chuckled but then grew more serious. "I was engaged once, about 5 years ago. Caroline was brilliant, a literary agent with impeccable taste. We made sense on paper." "What happened?" Felicity asked softly. "She wanted the idea of me more than the reality," Noah said after a pause. "The successful CEO, the social status, the life we'd have in New York. But the actual me, the one who works too much, who'd rather read alone than attend galas, who disappears mentally when I'm thinking through a problem, that version disappointed her." Felicity nodded slowly, recognizing painful similarities to her own failed relationship. "I understand that. David, my ex, he liked the idea of dating a photographer until he realized how much time I spent on location, how early I'd get up for the right light, how passionate I was about my work." "His loss," Noah said simply, and the conviction in his voice made Felicity's heart skip. The doctor confirmed a mild sprain and prescribed rest, ice, and elevation. As they drove back to the cabins, Felicity found herself wondering what would happen when Noah's vacation ended. The thought of returning to her solitary existence, which had once seemed so perfect, now felt oddly empty. "What are your plans?" she asked as they pulled up to her cabin. "I mean, after summer." Noah's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Honestly, I've been thinking about that a lot lately. The acquisition that brought me here, it's finalized now. The company's in a good place. My coup, Jessica, has been handling day-to-day operations brilliantly in my absence." "So you'll go back to being CEO," Felicity said, trying to keep disappointment from her voice. "Yes, but—" Noah hesitated. "I'm considering making some changes. Maybe opening a satellite office somewhere less urban, somewhere I could split my time." Felicity's heart raced at the implication. "Somewhere like here?" Noah turned to face her fully, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "I came here looking for a temporary escape. But I found something I didn't know I was looking for." "And what's that?" Felicity asked, barely breathing. "Balance," he said softly. "Purpose outside of work, connection." His eyes held hers. "You," the moment stretched between them, fraught with possibility. Then Noah leaned forward, his hand gently cupping Felicity's cheek as he brought his lips to hers in a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, Felicity rested her forehead against his. "I wasn't looking for this either," she admitted. "After David, I convinced myself that solitude was safer, that I was complete on my own." "You are complete on your own," Noah said earnestly. "That's what makes this different. I don't need you to be happy, I already am, but I'm happier with you." Over the next month, as Felicity's ankle healed and summer reached its peak, their relationship deepened. Noah continued to work remotely, taking video calls on his laptop while Felicity edited photos. They developed a rhythm that respected each other's work while creating space for togetherness. One evening, as they sat on Noah's porch watching the sunset, he broached the subject that had been on both their minds. "I have to go back to New York next week," he said, his fingers intertwined with hers. "Just for a board meeting and some strategic planning sessions." "But I'll only be gone for 10 days. Felicity nodded, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in her stomach. "It makes sense. You have responsibilities." Noah studied her face carefully. "Come with me," he suggested. "Not for the meetings, obviously, but you could explore the city, maybe meet with that photography editor I mentioned. We could show each other our worlds." Felicity hesitated, memories of her life in the city, the noise, the pace, the constant pressure flooding back. "I don't know if I belong in your world, Noah. You belong in my life," he said simply. "The rest is just geography." 2 weeks later, Felicity found herself in Noah's Manhattan penthouse, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows with views that took her breath away. Watching him in his element, confident, commanding, respected, gave her a new appreciation for the man she'd come to love. And she did love him, she realized as she watched him across a crowded gallery where her work was being considered for a major exhibition. The realization didn't terrify her as it once might have. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The real test came when Noah brought her to dinner at his parents' elegant Upper East Side home. Billionaire and Richard Nichols were polite, but clearly reserved, assessing Felicity with the careful scrutiny of people accustomed to social climbers and opportunists. "So you live year-round in that little mountain town?" Billionaire asked over appetizers, her tone suggesting she found the idea quaint but incomprehensible. "I do," Felicity confirmed. "It's perfect for my work. The changing seasons provide endless photographic opportunities." "And what are your plans now that you've met Noah?" Richard asked bluntly. "Will you be relocating to New York?" Noah tensed beside her, but Felicity placed a calming hand on his arm. "Actually, sir, I haven't decided yet. I love my home and Noah respects that. We're figuring things out together without either of us having to abandon what matters to us." Billionaire's eyebrows rose slightly, but Richard nodded, a glint of approval in his eyes. "Compromise, the secret to any successful partnership, business or personal." Later that night, as they walked hand in hand through Central Park, Noah pulled Felicity to a bench overlooking the lake. "I'm sorry about my parents," he said. "They can be direct." Felicity squeezed his hand. "They love you and want to protect you, I understand that." Noah took a deep breath. "These past 2 months have been the happiest of my life. Being with you, I've remembered what it feels like to live, not just exist." "I feel the same way," Felicity admitted. "You've helped me see that protecting myself from hurt also meant closing myself off from joy." Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Felicity's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal not an engagement ring, as she had momentarily feared, but a key. "This is to my cabin," he explained. "I bought it yesterday. It's officially mine now, not a rental." "You bought it," Felicity repeated, stunned. Noah nodded, his eyes serious. "I'm not asking you to change your life for me. I'm changing mine to include you. I'll still need to be in New York sometimes for work, but I can do most of it remotely, and when I can't, well, that's what planes are for." Tears filled Felicity's eyes as the magnitude of his gesture sank in. "You do that, split your life between 2 places. For the chance to wake up next to you as often as possible," Noah smiled, "in a heartbeat." They returned to the mountains a week later, now as neighbors by choice rather than chance. The fall colors were just beginning to transform the landscape, painting the hills in fiery reds and golds. On their first morning back, as they sat on the dock watching the mist rise from the lake, Felicity turned to Noah with determination in her eyes. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said, "to introduce me to your photography editor." Noah's face lit up. "Really, that's wonderful, but I want to do it right," Felicity continued. "I want to create a book that captures not just the beauty of these mountains, but the life here. The changing seasons, the wildlife, the community, a year in the wilderness." That sounds incredible, Noah said, his enthusiasm evident. When do you want to start? Felicity smiled, leaning in to kiss him softly. I already have. The first image will be of a city man sitting alone on a dock at dawn, finding his way back to himself. 1 year later, as the first copies of Wilderness Refuge, Seasons of Solitude and Connection arrived at Felicity's cabin, Noah proposed properly, not with grand gestures or elaborate plans, but simply with his heart laid bare beside the lake where they had first truly spoken. My whole life, I've built things, a company, a reputation, a fortune, he said, holding both her hands in his. But nothing I've ever created matters as much as what we've built together. I love you, Felicity Warren. Will you marry me? With tears in her eyes and joy in her heart, Felicity gave him the answer that had been forming since that rainy day when he carried her home and showed her that vulnerability could be a strength rather than a weakness. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. They married the following spring in a simple ceremony on the dock between their cabins, surrounded by friends from both their worlds. Noah's parents, who had gradually warmed to Felicity after seeing the profound happiness she brought their son, sat beside Felicity's mother and sister. As they exchanged vows with the mountains as their witnesses, Felicity thought about the strange, beautiful journey that had brought them here. A billionaire escaping to a cabin next to hers, a chance encounter that had transformed both their lives. I used to think home was a place, she said in her vows, her voice clear in the mountain air. These cabins, these woods, but now I know it's not where you are, it's who you're with. Noah squeezed her hands, his eyes shining with love. You are my home, he promised. No matter where we are, as long as we're together, I'm exactly where I belong. And as they sealed their vows with a kiss, Felicity knew with absolute certainty that what had begun as a temporary intersection of two separate lives had become something permanent and precious, a shared journey, a partnership of equals, a love that had room for both wilderness solitude and urban energy. The billionaire who had rented the cabin next to hers had indeed become her home, just as she had become his. Not a physical place, but a person. Someone to return to again and again through all the seasons of their lives.